Hello and welcome to R&R's Ask the Expert. I'm Kayla McGowan, Editor-in-Chief, and today we're talking about the little variables or the big variables that matter in catastrophe preparedness. I'm joined by George Hernandez, the COO of PuroClean. Welcome, George.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes, I'm so excited to have you because, about a year ago, I think you did a questionnaire for me and we kind of dove into other variables of catastrophe preparedness.
Yes.
And one that really, there's a lot of variables that are talked about, but maybe not acted upon. And
Right.
So that's really what I wanted to talk to you about today, because it's right up your alley, right?
Yes.
That's part of the SPAR program, and that's part of what you guys do with your partners and your vendors is build that up so when something does happen, you guys are prepared. So, when a cat hits, whether it's hurricane or fire, right now we're in hurricane season, so very relevant. Everyone talks about having these partnerships, but in your experience, what actually separates a real partnership from just maybe saying a partnership, right?
Right. Well, it's all about responding to the need when the need is there. There's many times where you develop a partnership, but because of lack of usage or whatever, there's a commitment, but no real action. A true partner is going to show up when you need them. Right? Like we are to our franchise owners. When a franchise calls and says, hey, I need assistance with X, Y, and Z, or I need equipment, or I need manpower, because of SPAR, we've done the research and the partnerships behind the scenes, so we know those partners are going to respond, and then we're going to respond as well with our resources like our rental fleet and so forth.
Yeah, and I was going to say too, these partnerships are all year long, not just when you need them, right? So there's
Correct.
a lot of conversation and there's a lot of planning, right? And I think that's where we've seen some parts of our industry break down. There's not proper planning in place, but you guys know what you're doing, obviously, and
Thank
that's
you.
why we really wanted to talk about this, because this is an all-year thing, and we know that catastrophes aren't really in season anymore. It feels like hurricane season is later and later into the year, and fires are happening all over, flooding's happening all over. So, I think another topic is equipment. Right?
Yep.
Do you rent? Do you buy? Do you partner?
Such a great question. Absolutely.
So we're gonna dive into that. A lot of restorers actually do struggle with that, and I think we've seen a lot of people purchase all this equipment and they can't use it.
Right.
And then it's like, okay, what do we do with that? So, in your experience, do you think that someone should rent or own during cat events? What's the smartest way to think about it? Because I think it does depend on the business.
It does.
And where you sit and how prepared you are. But for those watching, if they're just starting out, what would your recommendation be? And for those who are maybe a little bit more seasoned, what would your recommendation be?
So my philosophy has always been, you rent during the storm, you buy after the storm, okay?
Yeah.
Cash is king, right?
Yeah.
And in the middle of an event, there's a lot heavy burden on payroll. Employees can't wait to get paid, right? So that has to come first. So we always recommend conserve your cash for those expenses that you cannot defer. Are you gonna make a little bit less on the equipment? Sure, but you know what? There's no burden on the cash flow part. So you make a little bit more profit. Hopefully you have a storm that's profitable enough to where after you've collected all your AR and you've negotiated all your invoices, you have some cash that now you make a financial decision to reinvest into your company. And part of that reinvestment is always going to be equipment.
Yeah, and I would definitely say too, if it's your first time doing a cat event of any magnitude, what if you don't like it? Then you just bought all this equipment.
Correct.
It kind of reminds you of like when you buy a car. The value depreciates like immediately when you drive it off the lot. Same thing with your equipment, right? Because then at that point it's used. It's not brand new anymore. And so I think that there's things, to your point, you can get yourself in trouble, and you always want to take care of your home base first.
And during the storm, you don't always have an option to get the best equipment that you want, right? Sometimes it's not the right color, not the right piece of equipment. You don't have enough airflow, or the dehu that is required is not available. So you kind of have to almost settle.
Yeah. Where
after the storm and after everything settles down, it is all about getting what you need.
Those were great points, and I will definitely say too, when we're in these situations, we're chasing money a lot of times. And so why chase money and then make a huge investment? Because now you're really selling yourself short at that point. So your point, cash is king, and you need to make sure that you are looking at things in a bigger picture, not just in that moment, right? Sometimes we get a little excited because we're so passionate about what we do. We need to just take a second and say, okay, what's the best thing for my business and what's the best thing for my team?
Right.
So I think another thing that is really touchy, even outside of CAT, is our manpower, our staffing, right? We recently did a survey and we asked, you know, what's your biggest struggle right now? And everybody was like, finding qualified technicians, right? And it's no different during a catastrophe, right? So what's one of the operational bottlenecks that you consistently see restorers underestimate during hurricanes, fires, really any catastrophe?
It's probably going to be labor and the amount of people they're going to need to, well, people that understand the job, right? It's easy to find somebody to move trash or sweep or do something like that, but you can't always be there to guide those folks. So you need qualified people to be able to manage and run projects, and that's where the bottleneck comes in. You can get plenty of general labor, but it's that skilled labor that there's not a lot of, and most of them are already working with somebody else. And there's some labor forces out there that have that type of labor, all right? But those are relationships, right? You go back to those commitments and partners at the beginning. Make sure you're building those throughout the year, not just when you need them.
Yeah, because I was going to say, chances are somebody else is trying to partner with them too. And if you haven't really nurtured those relationships, then the time that you do need them, it really turns into oh, well, we don't have the staff for you because X, Y, and Z is already tied down. And so it makes it a little harder to do.
And I'll be honest, it's typically first come, first serve. When you get that initial call, that's who's going to get the people.
Yes. So what's one of the most specific preparedness moves, whether it's contracts, logistics, or systems, that most companies do skip? I know we've talked a little bit about that, but what massive difference does it make in response?
Having a plan, right? So when you're not in the middle of an event, when you're kind of slow and things are not hopping at 100%, work on a plan. Think of who's going, what vehicles are going, what equipment am I going to have ready to deploy, what consumables do I need to take with me, what's my staffing model going to look like, where am I willing to go and not go, what type of event do I want to go to and not go to, am I going to respond to a hurricane, a flooding event, pipe freeze event, fires, wildfire. Plan all that out ahead of time, because if you plan, then all you have to do is execute. The worst thing you want to do is just wing it.
Get yourself in a lot of trouble, not have the right equipment or resources. And I think too, we've talked about this on the phone when, preparedness starts long before a season ever starts. So if you're trying to prepare now, hurricane season's already started. So chances are things are going to slip through the cracks, right? To your point. And so, just being proactive and not reactive, I think, is a lifesaver.
100%,
even dry runs. I know we don't always have the time in the world, but ask your staff, test them out, see what they know, what they don't know.
Have a storm meeting when there's no storm. How would you, pretend? Create a work in progress board and be like, all right, we have 50 jobs right now. How we handle that?
Right? And then that you're catching them off guard, just what it would be like in a real situation. So I think that's really, really important. So closing up here, large loss in cat work looks lucrative on the surface, of course. But where do contracts often lose money that you don't see until later in the game? And I say this because I think people think everything happens up front, and that's not always the case, right?
So the number one thing is to make sure that you're communicating clearly and setting expectations up front with the client, right? We get so hyped up and into the event that we fail to focus on the little details. Communication and having an upfront expectation is super important, because then, I didn't realize I was supposed to pay you today, or all that. But also is managing expenses, right? We're used to a certain level of expense to do a job. Well, when you're in an event, those tend to creep up or blow up, right? All of a sudden, when you get a room at a hotel for $180, it's now $500 a night, or
supply and demand.
And you're having to make adjustments and pivot, but you also have to get there and to make it worthwhile. So if you're managing expenses and understanding, hey, I am burning this amount of money a day, I need to make this to even break even, which is, at a minimum, what you need to do. know that, manage that storm, and make sure that you are keeping track of all your expenses.
Well, I was going to say, you mentioned burn rate, which is totally different from your residential day-to-day.
Right. But even then, right?
Yeah, you do know.
I need to do so many 3-bedroom hallway bathroom jobs in order to,
have break even or have some type of, positive. And I would definitely say too, when we're looking at things and we're talking about the importance of understanding what you're getting into, where things break down, it's really important to understand that, because to your point, if you're not transparent, you don't have all the paperwork you need to have signed, or even explain the process to somebody, this is also foreign to them.
Yeah.
And so it's our responsibility as the people who are doing it day in and day out to really take those people through the process and say, hey, in 30 days you owe this, or 60 days you owe this.
Right.
So you're still staying on top of it, and you're not really worrying about, oh gosh, are we in the negative?
And now you can plan your financials, right? If I know I'm going to get paid X amount on this day, X amount on that day, then you can say, okay, I could defer this, I could pay this up front, and so forth.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's all I have today. I think we covered a ton. Is there anything else you want to say before we sign off?
No, probably the only thing I would also recommend is team up with somebody that has been to an event, right? And maybe a fellow restorer, and say, hey man, let me shadow you, let me learn a little bit on your first one, just so you kind of experience it without incurring all the expense.
Well, I was going to say, and then costly mistakes are made, right? If you don't go and if you don't partner with somebody, and then, that's your reputation, that could be your business.
Absolutely.
So I think that was a very important point there, George. Well, thank you for sharing everything with us today. And for all of you watching, we will see you on the next episode of Ask the Expert. Take care.